Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Finance Committee. It's October the 16th, 2024. May I get roll call, please?
Mr. Grumney,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mrs. Cooper, here, Mr. Neff,
Here.
Mr. Ayer, here, Mr. Capel,
Here.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Present, present.
Thank you. We have minutes from our September 18th meeting. Can I get a motion on those minutes?
So moved.
I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please. Thank you. Damon, sorry.
Neff,
Yes.
I missed
Mr. Capel,
Abstain.
Mr. Ayer.
It says I wasn't here. I'm trying to think.
I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're missing.
I'll double check.
I think I was here.
Okay.
Mayor, if I recall, I don't mean to interrupt, but I thought we had discussion at one point that you can still vote yes for an agenda even though you weren't here approving what was discussed. Is that correct? You don't need to abstain? Okay.
Okay.
So,
So Damon, do you want to revote?
Yes.
I heard a yes from Damon Cowell.
All right, Mr. Ayer,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
7 yeas.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll jump right into the new business here. We have another review of the draft. Looks like review number 3. So, we'll jump right into that if we
Yeah.
can. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is, as Mr. Grumney said, the third review of the 2025 budget. A lot of the pages in your packet, beginning with page 5 through the probably page 14, you've seen already, and the numbers in there have not changed a whole lot. Just a few tweaks here and there. One thing that I did add to the category appropriations is the comparison from 2024 appropriations with the current 2025 proposed appropriations. So they are listed to the right, on the right columns of your pages, beginning with page 7 through 13. Yes. So, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. There were nothing significant was taken out or added to the budget since the last review. I did take care of some notes from Mr. Hennessy on the capital budget. Page 14, there were a couple duplicates in there that I did clean up a bit. Other than that, though, no major changes to the budget.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update. Any questions for Ms. Steffen on the third review of the budget, 25 budget?
Sorry, I didn't see the detail. Where did we land on J.R. Smith Park funding?
Funding, we have 500,000 from the ARPA funds in there. And I believe that's all we have.
Yeah, so we've got that, and we've got the
Oh, the grant?
And water conservation fund, so we've got
Yes.
another $2 million there, so we got $1 million in the budget at the moment. Yeah, that's targeted or designated for JR Smith Park. Now, I know you've asked me to do some additional research, so we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Damon.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the 2024 amended appropriations.
Okay, so on the council agenda, it was on for the first reading last council meeting. This will be the second reading tonight. Ordinance number 2024.01.3, third amended appropriation ordinance. This is on page 15 and 16 of your packet. I wanted to put this in the finance committee agenda so that I could go over these individual items and explain why we needed appropriation increases. So I'll just go through this briefly, and then if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to expound. In the general fund, we have need to increase by about $20,000 for maintenance on vehicles. So that's what that request is. We also have a request in the general fund for extra money to be paid for legal, engineering, and the rate study. Primarily, this is due to the additional legal and engineering fees, particularly due to the East Side NCA and some other one-off projects that we didn't anticipate from the beginning of the year. So these are just extra projects that have been added on that need to be paid for. So that's the additional $115,000. In the sewer fund, the electric bills are just keep getting higher and higher, and particularly at the wastewater treatment plant. We do have plans in place to look at some study or what's the word I'm looking for? Collaboration or
Aggregation.
aggregation, thank you. We're looking at some of that to help push the costs down a little bit. But right now we do have a need for an extra $60,000 to help pay for energy costs, particularly at the wastewater treatment plant. Capital fund, we have a request for an extra $200,000 in capital outlay for the admin and for the PD and the admin facilities project. And also $30,000 for wastewater treatment plants. And this is a reimbursement item from OWDA will reimburse us the extra $30,000. It's a pay in and pay out. It's money for the design project.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit more to the request for $200,000 to finish out the police and admin building. So what we didn't do, and I'll take full responsibility for this, is that we have, whenever you go through a construction project, you've got contract administration and contract inspection activities that go on as well. And we approved the continuation of the contract administration for the purposes of MS consultants. And what they do, basically, they're looking at every submittal that's submitted by the contractor to make sure it's equivalent to what was spec'd out. They're doing what they call requests for information. So if a contractor has a question about what the design intent was, they're there to answer that question as well. And then they also have to do some additional design work if something comes up. So for example, in the police building, in the municipal building, once we took the walls down, we realized we had some additional structural elements that we had to shore up. So they had to do some additional design work. They had to go through the building construction, through the building permit processing as well. So we accounted for that, but what we never did is came back to get an appropriation for that. And so as a result of that, we paid that out of the base appropriation that we had for the contract, for the construction piece of that. So what you see here is really just those pieces. It's DLZ, and it's MS consultants to provide the services that you have during the construction build process. The final thing I will say is this, is that we did ask the mayor in support of this, and hopefully council will feel the same way. We did try to, as we talked about in the budget, we put another $100,000 for both the police building and the municipal building in the 2025 budget, or just any sort of additional items that are going to be coming up. Once you get into a building, you realize there's some other things that we need to do. We do have a few items that we're going to try to finish out this year. And so what we've done is in this $200,000 is also pulling about $25,000 forward for each building to kind of get a head start on those items. An example of that would be the floor over at the police building. We took that out of the original contract, but after they went through and started cutting up the floor, realizing that they were moving walls and what have you, they just couldn't put it back in a way that it really looked professional. So those types of things there. So that's what this $200,000 is for. I just wanted to provide a little bit more context because it's a big number, and you deserve a little bit more information. So if there are questions, happy to answer them, but mostly just wanted to provide some additional context.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
In Fund 901, pass-through agency fund for engineering, we have a need for an additional, this is pass-through money, so money that we are receiving from the developers paying CT for their work on inspecting their projects. So we need to increase that. The revenue is also being increased on the next page.
So that's not a true cost to the city then, that's just.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's not a cost to the city. It's just having to make the books reflect that we are correctly appropriating money that we are spending and receiving. And finally, in Fund 902, Mayor's Court Fund, if you recall, we had to create a Mayor's Court Fund based on our audit comments. And in line with that, we also have to appropriate the revenues and expenses, similar to the in and the out with the pass-through engineering. It's a very similar concept. We need to appropriate those funds and account for the revenues as well. So not a true cost to the city, but something that we have to do to get our books correct. So that's everything that's on the amended appropriation number 3. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I'm just looking at the, like the utility services and maybe just those operational costs. In the 2025 budget, have we appropriately adjusted upward to avoid coming back
Yes,
this time next year? And
yes, I have.
okay.
I'll look at that again with this reiteration of more appropriation increases, just to make sure I've
Yeah,
covered.
I know everything goes up.
Yeah, I hate, it's a balancing act. I hate to put
Yeah.
too much money in there and
Right.
not need it, so.
Right, I understand. It's hard to project, so.
A couple, I mean, just in Ms. Steffen's defense, and I'm definitely not combating what you're saying, but you know, we're asking them to do these things. So we're asking staff to go out and fix the floors in the police department. You know, it's something where you try to like cut costs every single place along, you know, a $4 million project. And when you see the end project, you're like, the light blue epoxy against the dark blue epoxy, and one's worn and one's not. In a main training room where we're going to be training other officers and potentially hosting other departments, like it's probably worth the money. You know, other examples are, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but like the administrative building, badge access and things like the key system right now. God bless our team for opening the door for everybody. But, you know, we want to get more automated, and that's something that like we were trying to trim, and now we're realizing, hey, you know, we should probably accelerate that. Another example, and, you know, I will definitely own this, but I think we have a good plan for recoupment, is, you know, being really forward thinking about diversifying our tax base, thinking at the highest level what we're doing on the east side of Sunbury. You know, it does take a lot of upfront planning, a lot of risk on the city side in terms of engineering costs, legal costs, planning costs, but we are planning on recouping a large majority of, especially our outsourced expense on that. So when we're $115,000 or $215,000 over budget now, you know, the next mayor is going to look back and say, thank you, because now we are receiving revenue for that through NCA proceeds and the like. And John, I promise you that wasn't as a, like, are we not doing a good job? I think we are still in such a fluid situation and such a growth mode that I think we're doing the right thing in terms of like, okay, let's try to get ahead of it. And if it means we have another piece of legislation to approve, then that's what we have to do.
Thank you.
For the record, I saw Daryl leave his light on his office overnight.
62 cents.
I didn't say you were awake, I just.
Oh, good.
Okay, sorry to derail there. So, all right. Okay, any other questions about the amended appropriations? If not, thank you, Ms. Steffen. I appreciate it. And I'm going to assume that Mr. Wade is here, Officer Wade's here to talk about the vehicle lease and purchase program.
Yes, he is. And before we turn the time over to him, I'll just briefly introduce this topic.
Okay,
This will go along with some decisions we may or may not be making for the 2025 budget. We wanted to put in front of council or finance committee tonight the work that he and I have both done. He's done the majority of this work, but I've also been there to help along and do a little bit of research myself. But we put this presentation together, which is on the next several pages of your packet. And maybe if we can pull it up too, it's on the OneDrive. We wanted to do a comparison and see what it would look like financially if we leased some vehicles as opposed to purchasing them, which is what the standard protocol has been for the past several years. So with that, I will turn the time over to Deputy Chief Wade.
Evening all. Thank you for taking this time and allowing us to present a little bit of a quandrum we're in here with our fleet of police cars. As much as I don't like to lean on the COVID problem or It is the nature of the beast, I think, here, as we can see, along with inflation, and many other things. So when I say COVID, I don't just mean I'm talking about supply, demand in a large scheme for the actual cars themselves, but also the upfitting of these cars. Every little piece of equipment that goes into this car is made by 10 or 12 different groups. So if you can imagine, over these last 4 years, it's been pretty intricate in getting, and then by demand, I mean, all these police agencies that are trying to catch up is now, it's almost like everybody's fighting for one thing. So something we'll briefly talk about here is the current fleet, current process, lease, pros and cons, purchasing, pro and cons, and a recommendation. So our current fleet, I won't go through every single one of these. To get you an idea, the trucks, the 2022s, and those prices were including the upfitting. Purchase price was $47,000. On the outside of that was the upfitting. You can go clear back through to 2015, and it was $36,000 for an upfitted Ford Explorer. The 2007, not to lose anybody, the 2007 Toyota minivan, ironically, was seized and forfeited when I was in the drug task force in 2007, and it found its way over here for around $1,500. And it's been a decent vehicle for specialty items. And these are just some pictures of the current fleet. 2016, and the 95, car 95 is an SRO vehicle. You'll see Officer Whiteside in it. The other one is the 2015, the Chief drives. The 2022 Silverado, the 2020 Tahoe. The Tahoes in our fleet has been, they were 2020s, and we've been running into issues with those with overheating. This is an issue that's been happening with other agencies. I've called around, I spoke with OSP's fleet management. I've spoke with other agencies that are using them in those specific years, 2021, for whatever reason. Transmissions, air conditioning units, cooling. So the idling that's needed for these cruisers to keep the electronics going is difficult with these Tahoes, and it's creating some problems. And they're at 50 and 60,000 miles. Our desired fleet is 7, just to give you an idea. So I called around to some of the contacts I have. The Village of Plain City has 7 marked and 3 unmarked. Genoa Township has 14 marked, 5 unmarked. Delaware City has 18 marked and 7 unmarked, and this is cruisers. And the city of Powell has 9 marked and 4 unmarked. Our desired fleet would be 7 frontline upfitted marked cruisers, 2 backup cruisers that would be probably the chief and I, and utilized for secondary cruisers. And then the 2 SRO vehicles, and then 1 assigned administrative vehicle. And we have a property clerk that has to take property to London for processing. We have training, we have meetings that we have to go to throughout the city. We have specialty items that these administrative functions that we go to with the collaboratives that we're a part of. And right now, people are either driving their own vehicles or taking a marked cruiser, a frontline cruiser, and going to these and an option would be for an unassigned, unmarked vehicle. And then the other is our Toyota minivan. So the current process, we order a cruiser. It comes in from the dealership. We fight for one, we get the cruiser. And as you can see, the year-over-year prices right now is about a $4,000 a year price increase on the cruisers is where we're at, about 7.5%. You use the Tahoe as an example, it's a roughly 30% increase. That Tahoe that cost us $39,000, $38,000 in 2020 is now going to cost us anywhere from $54,000 to $58,000 just to purchase the vehicle. Lead times, 6 to 18 months. It didn't really matter which group you were dealing with. Stellantis has kind of come forward with these Durangos being available, more readily available, so much as the Ford Explorer or the Chevy Tahoe, or even the Silverado still stays relatively available. But that's going to become competitive. As I just talked to State Highway Patrol, they picked up several of those for their fleet, as well as the Durangos. So again, we're going to be competing in this market for these things to purchase. And then you have a time frame to get the vehicle, and now we have to call upfitting. And upfitting through PAR right now is 6 months to get the cars in, or get the equipment in. So all the stuff that goes in the cars, we're looking at a 5 to 6 month to get it in, and then at least a few weeks for each car to get upfitted. Maintenance costs, that's another highlight in this. 2021, roughly $8,000 was spent in maintenance. We're up to 19,000 in climbing and trying to maintain our fleet. This leasing program, municipal leasing program. So it's kind of an interesting concept, and it's changed. Initially, when you hear leasing, you're like, oh, absolutely not. Oh, this doesn't make sense. Well, if you look at Stellantis, you look at Chevy, you look at some of these, they have these baseline vehicles, these fleet vehicles that they have manufactured quite a few of. So they have these. GM gives the opportunity, as well as Stellantis. The enterprise program is the old style leasing, what we would say. The new style leasing is you get it day one. There's no mileage restrictions after 5 years of 1 year annual structured payments. At the end of 5 years, you own the vehicle for $1. So there's no mileage restrictions, or whereas enterprise, when we had spoke with them, if they they watch the algorithm on the value of the vehicle, and let's say 3 years in, the vehicle is worth more, they'll say, hey, we need to get this in and get it traded in. That's not viable for a upfitted cruiser. Whereas these are owned by the city, and it's 5 years and it's annually structured. Again, no mileage restrictions. Now, one of the things that Stellantis offers is a 5-year, 100,000 mile mechanical warranty. That is extremely important, because if we look at the GM ones we bought, we didn't get the extended warranty, and it's been hitting us for a transmission and an air conditioning unit. Now you're looking at $1,500 to $2,500 or $4,500 a pop. So this specific program through Crown Dublin lease program offers a 5-year, 100,000 mile mechanical warranty. Obviously, to reduce lead time, it's structured. We know what our budget is each year and the specifics. And if you look at the interest rates at, I think it was 4.6 is the most recent on this, versus the 7.5% increase year over year pricing. That's interesting. The purchasing pros and cons. We own the vehicle, obviously no outstanding payments or interest paid, placed in the city's asset day one. High cost rising year over year, uncertainty in stock availability. Maintenance for our vehicles is where and when. You know, we have a couple different agencies that take care of maintaining our vehicles for us, but it can be challenging, and it takes the officers time to go out and shuttle the vehicles, call, get the appointment, and then square away getting these vehicles where they need to be. Chesrown, Coghlan, some of the local businesses we use for oil changes and whatnot. One of the interesting concepts that Crown offers is they offer a mobile utility work, where they actually, for oil changes, basic stuff, they will come on site and do it on site. Or if they can't, they will bring a rollback, pick up the vehicle, take it to their dealership and fix it. That frees up our officers doing this shuttling of vehicles. Another interesting thing they threw in is when they're doing the oil changes on the cruisers, if any of the staff or anybody local that needs their oil changed for a cost of an oil change, they'll do it there. Again, purchasing, we don't know where it's landing year over year. So the leasing example here would be 6 vehicles. 5 would be upfitted and 1 wouldn't be unupfitted, not upfitted. So, and the theory behind that is the 5 would go in and it would relieve some of the vehicles. We have 4 that we need to sell and get rid of based on the mileage and the amount of maintenance that we're going to have on these vehicles. So our maintenance bills are worth more than the vehicle, times 2, times 3 sometimes. So our budget was $80,000 to purchase and upfit a vehicle. And so for 5 upfitted and 1 not upfitted, plain marked car, you're looking at $77,000, $77,976 a year. That's what the upfitting included in. So what Crown does is they allow $16,000 cost for the upfitting through Bullet in Plain City. and they actually put that into the actual lease program. When you see non-upfitted, that is us paying out of pocket to actually pay for the upfitting, and that's what that would be without the cost of putting in radios, center consoles, the prisoner seat, all the things that we have to put into a cruiser. Now, why would we get an unfitted upfitted? Why would we do a plain marked one? Why would we? It's for build out. We have 5 cruisers. One of the interesting things is these companies change the body style of the vehicle. Well, when they do that, it now costs us more to upfit the vehicle later. So by having this unmarked vehicle used for our administrative functions, our detective, we can utilize that vehicle or watch for an unmarked vehicle we can purchase for a small price later, and then utilize that vehicle, upfit it, and put it right into our fleet. So it's kind of a built-in growth that's being utilized. The miles stay down, it's under warranty just like everything else, and it's there if we need it in case something catastrophically happens with one of our upfitted cars. And you'll look down through here, the total cost over a 5-year term, upfitted and not upfitted. I'm sorry, that's hard to follow, but basically it's incorporating the upfitting cost versus not incorporating that. The only thing not covered is in the warranty is obviously wear items like your normal 5-year $50,000. It's basically like your powertrain warranty. If you go buy a vehicle 5-year $50,000, this is 5-year $100,000 for these cruisers. So electrical wouldn't be included, as well as your oil change, tire rotation, and whatnot. You know, our recommendation is at least 5 upfitted, 1 non-upfitted. First payment on the deal, close of the deal with our $80,000 budget, utilizing that $80,000 instead of purchasing 1 and upfitting it, securing this year, and then allowing us to get our 5 to get a shot in the arm and getting our fleet back up, get it back operating, and then evaluate the program annually as we go to see if it's a viable option moving forward for the city, if it makes financial sense. And if necessary, through those 5 years, try to layer in the purchase of any other vehicles so we can move away from leasing if it's not where we want to be. Leasing appears to be the viable option. In order to purchase all these vehicles at one time, you're basically looking at roughly $400,000 out of pocket at one time to get everything up to speed, instead of over a 5-year structured program. And as of last night, I received actually a phone call from the gentleman I'm working with Crown, and they were able to get some 2024 pricing and actually drop the price per vehicle $1,550 for a total savings of $9,300 additional savings on the purchase of 6 Durangos. Again, I ran through that fast. We appreciate your time. There's a lot of information there. I did not want to get into the weeds on this, but it is kind of a unique situation we're in with the fleet. I mean, eventually, I think in the beginning, what was intended was to buy 2, rotate 1, buy 2. It's a constant refresh of the fleet. The 2020 era, again, I do not want to blame COVID on this. Some of this is, I think administratively, we could probably watch a little closer in-house, and we will do so. But some of it is way beyond our control. These dealerships and trying to get these vehicles purchased, we're competing from a lot of agencies. I mean, you're looking at Indiana State Patrol who's buying 600 cars. You're looking at the State Patrol of Ohio who's buying 100 to 200 at any given time, and we're trying to buy 1 or 2. So it's a challenge that a lot of the agencies are having, and this seemed like a viable option to structure the payments and get us caught up as a one-time catch-up kind of thing, and then evaluate it as we go. Maybe it's the answer going forward. I don't know, because I don't know where our costs are going. Thank you for your time, everybody.
For the presentation. I appreciate it. I have a few questions, but if other people have questions, please go ahead. Again, thank you for your time. Great explanation of this. So I'm just going to summarize in my own mind just to make sure I understand. So rather than buying 1 here and there, 1 this year, 2 next year, 3, we get all 5 up front. We're paying in equal payments over the 5 years. At the end of that 5 years, do you refresh then? Is the idea that at the end of those 5 years, we'd start the process again?
So some of the areas I skipped over there was years 2 and 4, we're looking at unmarked cars to
Okay.
replace like the Tahoes, put them to SROs, sell those 2 cars that are aging at 92,000 and 70,000 miles. And then maybe years 3 and 5, look at purchasing another cruiser to keep us balanced to where if we want to move away from leasing, we're back into the position to take these Durangos and purchase them for $1, use the ones that are still viable in the fleet to
Okay,
get us caught up. And we can, if we want to turn them in and trade them in, we'll get the value of them, or we can buy them for $1.
right, okay, great, thank you for that. And then, I'm assuming there's other, departments doing this model. I mean, we're not inventing this model of the leasing, correct? I'm assuming
There is, yes, there's other agencies doing it. I've not heard anything derogatory towards it whatsoever. Again, it's a unique thing that works, especially when you're trying to buy
Yeah.
6 vehicles at one time.
And then 2 other things and I'm done. I'll do the one I was gonna do last and first. Do cities or police force, do they ever buy direct from the manufacturer versus going through the middle person like a dealership? Are you ever able to make a deal with a manufacturer and say, hey, look, we're looking to purchase X amount of vehicles in the next year. Can you do that for us?
No.
No, okay.
No, they have, state bidding has changed, the whole
Okay.
programs, it goes to certain dealerships.
Actually,
And they're kind of out of that.
Okay.
I have reached out to GM.
Yeah.
Really, their type of municipal lease program. I was passed around to about 8 different people. It was very challenging and I got a very similar situation, not near the customer service that this was being offered.
that's it. And then my last question is, and this may be unpopular because I'm definitely pro-America and all that stuff, but I have myself have owned Fords and Chevys and I found myself in shops many times. Are there any thoughts or ideas where a police department uses a Honda?
They have,
Yeah, okay,
they're just, the problem is they're not pursuit rated.
okay,
So this Durango is you'll see the acronym PPV, it's pursuit rated vehicle.
okay,
So there's SSV, specialty vehicle, and pursuit rated.
okay,
Pursuit rated is nothing more other than heavier brakes, better chassis, then not so much more power. It's got some different things, a heavier alternator for charging the electronics. If
okay.
you end up with something like your typical Ridgeline or something like that,
Yeah,
it's got to have some upfitting to be able to keep up with what it is for our demands.
gotcha. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
What did you say the company's name was that you were working with?
Crown Dublin,
And they have 6 vehicles available?
they have 6 2024 Durangos available. And for that price, the slides will show 46. You got to remove 1,555 from each one of those because that just changed yesterday. And I apologize. I was going to put it in the slide.
Don't apologize for saving money.
I tried to get more out of them, but that's the best I could get. So
A few comments. How long is the deal for?
5 years.
Sorry, how long is the incentive deal for if we buy the 24s? The 11,000 off. Did they say you got to sign by the end of the month?
We're okay.
They're gonna
we're
reserve
fine.
those vehicles for us until,
Well, I mean,
Wait
as
on-
far as, I see what you're saying. As far as the availability of the vehicles, no, it's first come, first serve. Those go to another department. We're without.
you're not asking for action tonight. You just want us to know.
Go ahead, Dane.
Well, to your point, this is a very timely issue. So if council would like to act on this, one thing that has to be considered is the competitive bidding requirement. In discussions with our legal counsel, we did determine that competitive bidding would be required. However, there are some instances where that can be waived if council did decide to do so, and Mr. Bream can speak to that. But as for action tonight, if council did want to, if finance committee did want to move forward, we could have a motion at council and put together an ordinance for next time. So,
We did look at this. I mean, it's called a lease, but it really is a purchase. You know, the dollar buyout at the end, I think is pretty clear. You can call it whatever you want to call it, but really we're spending, and again, I'm not being critical of the price, but it's well over the competitive bidding threshold. One thing that we did do, which I love in our charter, is we build in the ability to get out of competitive bidding. I mean, there are several bullet points to be able to do that, you know, emergencies, things are available through cooperative purchasing program. If there's an emergency that threatens public safety or property, really, none of those really fit this. Maybe you could call it an emergency, but I think that's a stretch. But there is a catch-all where council determines it has to be a 5 out of 7 vote, super majority, that the waiver is in the best interest of the municipality. In discussions with Dana, that's why I'm here tonight. We think that we need to go through and have that in our legislation. We didn't want to be presumptive and think that you were gonna take this and want to act on it tonight, but certainly I wanted to be here to let you know if you want to do this, in my opinion, the charter allows you the mechanism to do it. But it would take 5 of you to approve it.
Maybe this is what I would propose, if everybody's feeling like generally okay, and then we haven't even got through questions yet. Plan on the 30th. Let's see how much Crown really likes this as a potential client. Ask them to hold the vehicles. In the meantime, if they sell any, the deal is off. And we work towards an October 30th potential approval, understanding that, I mean, yes, we are locking ourselves into a fixed payment for 5 years. That's every year we budget for a police vehicle. So this, it really isn't that different.
Right.
The other thing I would say is we've already budgeted for year 1 payment, right? One thing we didn't talk about, you're now going to have the sure signs or the like expense all at once. So that's something, I mean, just to think about. I mean, we've never bought 6 vehicles or 5 vehicles at once, and that's not a big part of the equation, but it is an expense. It's got to be at least 10 grand.
If you're talking about the actual wrapping.
Yeah,
it's
wrapping.
$1,000 a vehicle per vehicle.
So 5 or 6. And then my next question is, do they have Ram 1500s? You don't have to answer this today, but just if you can look into it before next meeting. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Personally, I like the dollar buyout at the end of 5 years. Do you know the history of the vehicle now? And you can sell it if you want after that, or keep it if it's worth keeping. I think that's a win. And on the savings, that 9,300 in additional savings, tell them 10,000, we got a deal.
Yeah. Just giving you an idea as far as pricing wise, and I'll leave you with this. The Tahoe and the Silverado right now are between $55,000 and $59,000 to purchase the vehicle. The Ford is between $47,000 and $50,000 to purchase the vehicle. Durango was 46 to 47 and is now went down to 44 in this deal.
Excuse me.
Yes, what would you rather have? What would your,
So since the patrol officers are the ones that are out in them, we asked, Brown had brought a vehicle over and we put our patrol officers in them to make sure that this is something that was viable. We've checked with other agencies, State Highway Patrol specifically. These are the V6 versions. These are not the Hemi V8 versions. The Hemi V8s are having issues right now. Talking to the State Highway Patrol, the V6s are holding up, and all the State Highway Patrol, all of our officers, more importantly, felt that there was plenty of room in the vehicle. It was comfortable, it handled well, and they could see that, it would be no problem with them actually doing their duties in this tool.
It's a lot cheaper. So I think council or finance is in agreement. Like the financial part of it, I mean, if they're significantly less than the Ford and the Chevys.
So do you think there's any realistic concern that if we wait till the 30th, that those vehicles might be gone
I know, that's what
between now and then?
I can't answer that. I mean, right now they've been available for the last 2 or 3 weeks that I've been trying to work through this, as well as with Dana, and we've met with the representative at our office.
Yeah.
So I don't have any reason to believe it won't be there, but I don't.
I mean, I don't have any problem using the passing the competitive bid, but Mayor, I know you said wait till the 30th, so I'm fine with that too, but I just want on the record that I don't mind,
I will second that.
but yeah.
How's that? Do we have a motion on the table?
I mean,
Do we have any further discussion on this? Because I think we're progressing. I wanted to see if Crown was for real, but we're taking that, we're giving them the easy pass, it sounds like.
The art of the deal.
Won't the motion come up in the council meeting, not in the finance meeting?
That's right.
Listen, thank you all for.
yeah,
And if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll answer the best I can, or at least seek the answer for you.
thanks for your time. Appreciate the
Yeah, thank you.
information.
Thank you.
And if we do a motion, we need to ask you for emergency language associated with the ordinance.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna do a motion tonight, we don't have any legislation prepared for you tonight. This really should be a legislative item versus a motion item. I think what you might consider is doing a motion to direct the chief to indicate that council has approved, subject to, legislative action at your next meeting on the 30th, the purchasing of these vehicles and authorizing them, again, contingent upon.
Oh, yeah.
Final approval to indicate that and to sign anything that lets them know and provide that to them. Maybe that gives them some reassurance to allow them to put a hold on them. Again, it would be subject to your final legislative ratification, but at least it would give them something. We can.
Those words handy for the.
Say, Dave, that's up to you for that motion. You for that motion, Adriana.
Verbatim.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a great conversation. Now I think we have the much awaited section 139 updates. Yes, we've all been trying to get through this stuff to get to the 139s.
Dana's like, finally. All right, thank you. Section 139, as you know, is our employee handbook, and I have gone through with conversations with our staff and with Daryl, and I've made some red line adjustments. We're not ready to present finance committee or council with a final red line version for approval. However, I just wanted to run through some of the proposed updates. And this is on page 31 of your packet. There's a lot of clarifying language and language to mirror the FOP agreement. So you'll see that in some of these, particularly in the sick leave and the vacation and the call-in work. Number one, employee attendance, clarifying language to make reasonable attempts to elicit an acknowledgement from their supervisor if they're going to be absent. Call-in work, added language to mirror the FOP. The clothing allowance, we added language to allow for the city to recoup the cost of a clothing allowance that's given to an employee if they terminate employment prior to the end of their probationary period. And overtime approval, number 4, we added some clarifying language there to allow usage of certain types of leave to be included in the calculation for overtime. And then, as I mentioned, sick and vacation, they just mirror the FOP. And number 7, compensatory time. This currently sits at employees are allowed to use up to 24 hours of compensatory time in a calendar year. We'd like to increase that up to 50 hours per year. And then number 8, finally, the cell phone policy. Currently, the policy states that cell phones are not allowed to be used at all, but we are modifying that to use as long as it is for work-related purposes or an emergency. So those are the few changes that I currently have in the red line version. And after I discuss this with Mr. Hennessy and possibly Ms. Grafmiller, we will present you with a red line version at some point in the future. But if there are any questions on anything I have presented here, I'm happy to answer.
What's an example of compensatory time?
If an employee works overtime, they have the option to accept an overtime payment of 1.5 times their rate, or they can bank that time into a future bank where they can use that time that they've earned as time off. So in lieu of getting paid for the overtime, they would bank it for future use for time off.
Is it banked at time and a half?
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this saying then that you can only accrue 24 to 50 hours or that you can only utilize 24? So you can bank more than you can spend?
I believe it's both banking and spending up to 50. I have to look at the verbiage, but I think the intention is to increase both of those.
Does comp time carry over?
Comp time does carry over. However, there are tricky rules with pension in comp time. Some of it's not pensionable if it's OPERS versus OPNF. It depends on the agency. So typically comp time should be paid out every year. If it's not used, it should be paid out at the end of the year so that it can remain pensionable income. Otherwise, if it's paid out in the year following, it's year following when it was earned, it is not considered pensionable income for pension purposes. So yes, they can carry it forward, but we don't really recommend that.
Any other questions? Yeah, I think we go with our closers then, which is our year-to-date comparison reports and bank to book reconciliation.
The same reports that you're used to seeing every month are in here again for year-to-date through September. And I guess the summary is that we went through the appropriation increases earlier this evening, and that kind of it's an overarching explanation of everything that's on these next pages. So anything that needed to be addressed, we've discussed already in the appropriation ordinance. But I'll just briefly talk about our income tax, as I like to talk about that every month. We are seeing we're at a 15.7% increase year to date over last year. That continues to be, we're seeing record growth there for income tax. Interest income is also very high. I think we received about $90,000 last month, just in interest income alone. So that continues to be a source of nice revenue for the city. As far as expenses go, of course, the cruiser repairs for the police department, we do need to increase the budget there. I'll just note that the Big Walnut Intermediate Trail, we did receive compensation or reimbursement from the school for their portion of that. So just wanted to keep you in the loop that we did receive that. And then everything else is what we've already been discussing, and I don't want to bore you with all the details that you've heard time and time again. So I'll just ask if there are any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Steffen? All right, I don't see any, so I think you're off the hook. I think we're done.
All right.
Awesome.
That's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentations. Any other questions for staff before we call this meeting finished?
So was there going to be an update before end of year on the budgeting software that you shared from last month?
Thank you for that. I have not done any further research on that since, but I can definitely put that on for next meeting. I'll get some comparisons.
Thank you.
Okay, looking for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll say, oh, Murray's got the second. So you have Mr. Martin and Mr.
Yes. Yes.
Seaver? Yes. Mr. Grumney?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Ms. Strayer?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Seven yeas, we are adjourned.